A guy on one of the woodworking channels I watch was trying to demonstrate a technique where you can joint a board that's wider than your joiner's capacity. I had tried the same technique years ago and ran into the same problem that he did, but one of his commenters suggested a fix for the problem, and I'm getting ready to try that out. I think it's going to work. We'll see. The commenter suggested putting a piece of MDF on top of the infeed table so the infeed table can be lowered down out of the way. I'll put a link to that guy's video so you can see the issue he was having. So my joiner is 6 inches, which gives me about 5 7/8 on the outfeed table. And my board is roughly 8 inches. In order to do this technique, if you have a swing-in guard, it has to be removed. So in order to keep from creating an unnecessarily dangerous situation, I clamped on a temporary sort of Euro style guard over the cutter head. I've got my MDF cut just slightly under the width of the outfeed table, and that will allow, as I joint this board, the lip that's going to form will allow it to drop down, so I can take nearly 1/4 of an inch off of this board without it hitting the infeed table. With the infeed table being wider than the outfeed table, you can make one pass, but when you come back to make a second pass, the ridge rides up on the infeed table and doesn't drop down where it needs to in order to keep going. So I've got one square edge on this board that I've already jointed. This is a piece of Leyland cypress, by the way. I'm going to be jointing the wide side and keeping the live edge live. Well, I set my table height down to 9/32 to accommodate the 1/4 inch MDF, and so I can take off a 1/32 of an inch per pass. But you can see I got a nice clean ridge all the way down. One spot right toward the end, the ridge is low, but that's because of the way the board cut on my bandsaw. It had a dip in it right there. So the jointed part is beautiful, nice and smooth. I never knew Leyland cypress had such pretty grain to it. I would have never guessed. I figured it'd just be junky white wood, but it's actually quite beautiful. On my board that I used to clamp the MDF to the end of the joiner, I had to cut a taper to match the taper on the end of the joiner. If I had just put it straight, it would have been kicking the MDF up. So yeah, just put a couple screws in it to hold it together. So I have roughly 2 inches of unjointed board left. I'll move my MDF over a little over 2 inches from the fence so the unjointed part can ride in the gap that is created. But in order to keep from taking too much off in one pass, I've had to raise the table. I started off with the table at 9/32. My unjointed part of the board, the thickest unjointed part, is 5/32, and I still want to take off a 32nd for each pass, so I raise the table up 1/8 of an inch. That'll give me, for the first pass, that will let me take a 32nd of an inch off, and then after the first pass I'll have to drop the table 1/32 until I get back down to the 9/32 to make the board even all the way across. Hope that makes sense, because I've already shot this about 4 times explaining this, and yeah, it's a little confusing to me. On my last pass through, I came up with a little issue. I had a ridge on the square edge side of the board, that on the part that was already supposed to be finished. And I think what may have happened is I ran the ridge from the live edge side up on top of my MDF and caused the board to twist a little bit, letting the cutter head dig into the middle part and make that ridge. So I came back with a hand plane and planed off the ridge on the part that was supposed to be finished. And I reset my MDF to the first position and jointed the square edge side again to give me a deeper ridge on the live edge side. I'm getting ready to run the live edge side back through the joiner for one more pass and see if I can clean this up and make it look right. I have moved my MDF out farther from the fence to give me a little more room to work with. This being live edge, I can't really guide against the fence. If it was a square edge board, I could have just pushed it against the fence and I don't think I would have had the problem. Alright, so that did the trick. That must have been what happened. I must have twisted the board on that last pass and got up on top of the MDF with the ridge I was trying to joint off. So now it's very good. I could easily take this over to my planer, flip it over and plane this side, and then the back side is plenty good enough just to sand out. Bring the camera over closer so you can see what I got here. Well, this is looking very good. We're doing an 8-inch wide board on a 6-inch joiner. I couldn't be happier with this. There's a tiny bit of a ridge, but that would easily sand out. It's not a problem. Considering how wavy this board was to begin with, that's pretty much perfect. So I'm going to call this a success. So I think if I do this again, I'm going to cut a series of shims to go on my outfeed table for when I'm joining off the ridge. That way when I raise the infeed table up, so I'm only taking a 32nd of an inch pass at a time off of the ridge. The finished jointed part will have a level surface to run out on instead of running off of the MDF and then dropping down onto the outfeed table. It didn't really cause a problem, but it didn't feel very good when it was going across and dropping, and it could have been an issue.